In today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about tools, objects that are a little bit awkward to sharpen, shall we say. Obviously, this isn't extensive. There is a lot more tools that can be classed as awkward to sharpen, but I am just going to cover a few, just for entertainment purposes. So, I'm going to start off with this little guy here, and this is the Veritas reamer. So yesterday I did sharpen it, and I have to be honest with you, it sharpened quite well and it sharpened quite quickly. So the issue with this, why it's kind of on my list as awkward to sharpen, see if I can get this on the camera. So you've got a detachable blade that comes out, and this detachable blade is what we've got here. So that's just shy of 10 millimeters. It probably was 10 millimeters at one time. So the reason why this is so awkward is that you've basically got 10 millimeters to hold the bloody thing, get it at its set angle, and move it backwards and forwards on, in my case, diamond plates. So as I said yesterday, this sharpened really well and it sharpened really quickly. I was very, very surprised because I looked at it, and just by looking at it, there was little nicks out of it, and I was like, oh, you kind of need sharpened. And when I started making these chairs, which was forever ago, and I've just gotten back round to progressing with them yesterday, which ironically is the only day I'm going to get because I am due to go back to work, ironically. But I knew that I had 2 more holes to ream, and the last hole that I reamed with this Veritas reamer, it was struggling a lot. Not to mention the fact that this is steamed beach, it's kiln dried, so it's like, it's super tough, this stuff. So it did need to be sharpened. Normally with things like this, it's like, straight away in my brain, it's going to be a hassle, it's going to be a headache, I don't want to do it, but it needs to be done. So as I said, the issue with it is that you basically got 10 millimeters to kind of hold, and then you've got to get the bevel. So there's a big difference with getting the bevel on something so small. So just to give you some kind of what's the word I'm looking for here, just to give you some comparison. So to get a bevel with the reamer, the bevel is, what we're saying there, my eyes are shocking, I'm going to say the bevel's just shy of 2 millimeters. So if we compare that to, say, a Japanese chisel, so it's quite easy for us to get the bevel on the Japanese chisel. So the comparison with the bevel on the Japanese chisel, we're looking at, what's that, 13 millimeters. So you've got 13 millimeters of reference compared to 2 millimeters of reference, and as you can imagine, if you have never sharpened a Veritas reamer blade, there's a big difference. But as I said yesterday, I was really fortunate. It sharpened up really quick, really well, and with this one, I haven't really got any tips for you, other than to maybe take your time, try not to have any distractions, like i.e. meaning don't be wearing earphones. I think lately I've been wearing earphones a lot, but there's always times where I've got to take them off, and I've got to have me hearing, just so I can hear. It might sound a bit stupid to some people, but if I can hear what's going on, because there will be a change in tone and a change in volume sometimes, and just a different sound altogether. When you're hitting the full bevel and you may be hitting the edge, there is a difference, especially with chisels. I've spoken about this a few times with chisels, not so much with the Japanese, but a Western style chisel, if you're putting a secondary bevel on, there will be a difference between the primary bevel sound and your secondary bevel sound. But I think probably that's the only tip I can give on that, is to take your time, listen. Those of you that have got decent eyes will probably be able to see, well, the bevel's making full contact. I can't. I was relying on feeling and listening with that one. So next up is my little apron plane. So I absolutely love this plane. It's great. I use it all the time. Use it for, you know, maybe getting the end grain on smaller pieces. Use it for beveling, touching up stuff. It's really, really handy. I wouldn't be without one of these now. I think I paid about 50 quid for this one. But one of the issues, probably the only issue I have with this, is that the blade is so small. So the blade, for those of you that are watching, is absolutely tiny. So what we've got here, that's 56 millimeters. So that's just over, well, that's nearly 1.25 inches. Sorry, two inches 1/4. Is that right? Yeah, 2 inches 1/4. And the width of it is, oh, what we've got, 22 millimeters. So one of the issues with it is it's not so much the width. I can deal with the width of it, it's more the length. So, you know, I've got small hands, but even with smaller hands, I do struggle to actually keep a hold of it. So or at least I use my left hand to apply pressure onto the bevel, and I'm using my right hand to try and keep the angle and to push it backwards and forwards. So this pretty much just sharpens like a chisel. Again, in another podcast I was explaining how I sharpen my chisels and my plane blades now, and this is the same sort of thing, but it can be a little bit fiddly. I think with this one, the advice I would give if you've got something small like this is that it would probably be better to use a kind of a 90-degree stroke. What do I mean by a 90-degree stroke? So or angle. So what I mean by that is that I'm just going to have the blade itself 90 degrees to the edge of the length of the diamond plate, and just move it backwards and forwards. The same sort of thing you would do with a Japanese chisel. And I think that's probably the best bit of advice I can give you on that. Sometimes I do use that, but other times I will just go backwards and forwards. I have gotten a little bit better and kind of got to grips with sharpening it, but it can be awkward, it can be a pain at times. Next up is the blades for this guy. This is a plow plane, and not so much the longer ones, but it tends to be the ones that are short and width, and this applies to chisels as well. And this is a prime example. You guys probably cannot see it on the screen, but this particular iron is actually skewed. It's skewed quite a bit actually, and it shouldn't be skewed like that. It should be 90 degrees. And what this is me rushing, trying to get it sharpened quickly so I can get back to work, and I've totally screwed the whole thing up. So it's not a massive deal. It's just, you know, I'm just going to have to work and take this out, bring it back to 90 degrees. So the problem with this is that it is so thin to hold, and you haven't got a lot of bevel, the width of its surface mating area or reference. So what's this one? This is 6mm. So you haven't got a lot of reference, and what I find is that it's quite easy to go to the left and the right. With me, because I'm applying pressure and I'm using me left hand to apply the pressure, I am applying too much pressure to the left, which is causing more pressure to be applied on the left, which is tilting the iron more to the left and causing a downward skew, if you will. So I'm pretty sure that if I was left-handed and I was doing the opposite and using my right hand to apply the pressure, I would probably have had a skew going the opposite way. So again, it doesn't matter if it's the blade or if it's a thin chisel. These can be awkward, and it can be very frustrating. Sometimes I forget myself. I'm a bit too confident in myself for sharpening, and just get it done nice and quick, pull myself away, go back to work, and then you kind of look at your edge and you think, ugh, you know, and it can be really frustrating. So I think with smaller widths of plane irons or chisels, it's probably just best just to take your time and to just bring the plane iron up to your face, maybe in the light, and just kind of see where you are, see what's happening, and obviously where you are with the burr on the back side. As I said, it's so easy to knock these out of square. And if you're creating, I don't know, maybe you're creating a shallow rebate, anything like that, or you're creating a groove and for whatever reason you need that groove to be 90 degrees at the bottom, it's going to kind of mess things up. So, you know, you do have to be careful when you're sharpening these. As I said, I would definitely recommend that you don't take it 90 degrees to the side of the diamond plate or the water stone and sharpen it as you would a Japanese chisel or kind of blade. I definitely wouldn't do that. I have tried it. And with the blade being so thin in width, it is easy to rock it, so you're kind of getting the same sort of thing. So I personally think it's better if you take it to and from yourself and just try to apply an equal force either side. I know it can be difficult, and as I said, just visually look at the edge and see where you are, see if you're going out to square one side, and don't be too cocky like I get sometimes, and make sure you take your time and check. Next up is the travisher. So just by looking at it, you can tell what the issue is with this, what I have, and it is because the blade is rounded. So I've got very little experience in sharpening this type of blade, like a rounded blade. So what I will use for this is basically a piece of dowel, maybe a peg, and I'll work my way through grits of sandpaper. Ironically, I haven't got the grits here, but what I would do with this is that I would use a marker, a black marker, and I would completely cover the bevel. And as I said, I would work my way down the bevel with some sort of a dowel or peg, most likely a peg, just like one of me Roman workbench pegs, you know, just wrap some sandpaper around it and work my way down the grit. So this is a little bit time consuming with these, but this particular travisher for seats, I don't know if it's going to work so well on the beach, just with the beach being tough, but using this on oak, this can remove so much material, especially obviously if you're putting like a full saddle in a traditional seat. which I've done. This was just remove with the oak, at least this was removing so much material, but obviously it has to be sharp to be able to do that. But it is worth taking the time to actually get one of these nice and sharp, just so you're able to take off a lot of material if you need to take off a lot of material. As I said, with this one, with me at least, I've just got to take my time and just go through the different grits. As I said, it's a little bit time consuming, but it is what it is. Next up is the spoke shave. So obvious again with the spoke shave, the only issue with a spoke shave is that it is just short. You know, there's no rhyme or reason to it. Normally with a spoke shave, I don't personally struggle too much, but I have heard a lot of people do struggle, and that's why I've included it in the list today. So what I do with this, same again, I use it the same, or sharpen it the same way as what I would sharpen a Japanese chisel. And there is another method I have seen Paul Sellers. Paul Sellers made a bit of a jig where basically the blade will register on a thin piece of wood, and you use the cap, the locking cap on the spoke shave to lock the iron onto the scrap piece of wood or the jig. And what this allows you to do, this allows you to sharpen it the same way you would sharpen, you know, one of your plain blades. So if you don't have one of those jigs and you don't want to make one of those jigs, I would just say, or maybe you just want to practice, you know, not using a jig, so you know you don't have to bother with jigs. When you need to sharpen one of these, you can just whap it out, get it sharpened, and be back to work in, like, you know, like 5 minutes, a few minutes, something like that. So what I would advise, again, just sharpen the same way you would sharpen a Japanese chisel or canna blade, which basically means if this was the edge of the diamond plate lengthways, you would just run the chisel, the edge of the chisel, parallel with the edge lengthways of the diamond plate, and just move it backwards and forwards. And I find that is enough for me. Next up is a handheld router. So this isn't an electric router, of course. For those of you that are listening, I'm not talking about an electric router. So another name for these routers is called, or the name of it is called a granny's tooth. So, you know, you can imagine an old crooked granny's tooth, you know, like back 100 years ago or whatever, you know, like kind of hanging out. And I think that's where the terminology comes from. But as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's basically an L shape, so it can be a little bit awkward. You do have to take your time. So for anyone interested, I did recently just do a video on how I sharpen one of these and how I use one. It's not extensive, but it is enough, and it does show you how to sharpen one of these, which is probably the most important part. So with these, again, these can be really frustrating and it can be a little bit time consuming. So the way I sharpen one of these, again, as I've stated, it's just time consuming. You have got to take your time. So I'll basically run this on the edge of the diamond plates. So the way my diamond plates are orientated, so I will show you guys. So this is my setup. I've showed everybody numerous times. So the thing with this is that the diamond plates are epoxied to plywood. So it means I can't take them off, which for the most part isn't a problem until you start sharpening stuff like this. So what I'm able to do, I am able to, on the extra coarse and the extra fine, I'm able to use the full length because it doesn't interfere with anything, and run it along the full length, just backwards and forwards. And it's the same on the extra fine. So the issue I have is actually going through the other two diamond stones. So again, time consuming. I've basically just got to use the very foot or the very heel of the diamond plate, you know, and I've just got to go backwards and forwards, and as I said, it just takes time. So I think the only advice and tips I could give you on this would be to watch the video if you don't know how to sharpen one of these, and patience, just have some patience with it. Mind you, it did take us a long time to get some patience with this one. So next up is going to be the draw knife. I don't use the draw knife a lot. Probably the only time I use the draw knife will be when I'm shaping round legs, pretty much like the round leg you should be able to see on camera now. So, you know, I use it for making conical tenons and obviously just removing a lot of material. Although I have to be honest with this beech, because it's so tough, it did struggle. I mean, traditionally these sort of chairs were made with green wood. The legs, you know, they were all green, they were roughed out, left to dry, and then, you know, finished finally. So I don't really think they were designed so much for using with, you know, this type of really, you know, dense hard wood. But you know, it does work, so, you know, I do use it. So it was only yesterday when I sharpened this. So for some people, what I've heard anyway, is that it can be extremely difficult, and I did do a video on sharpening one of these quite some time ago. So what I like to do, or what I had to do yesterday, which I don't always have to do, but I wasn't too particularly happy with the angle of the bevel. I thought the bevel was a bit too acute, so basically that means myself, I've been sharpening at too steep of an angle, and I wasn't particularly happy with the angle. So I did alter the angle, and what I actually done, I actually put this on the corner of the bench and clamped it down. So again, if you are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see what I mean. So it basically got clamped at this corner, and I then came in from the front, the cutting edge, and started filing some of the heel off. So I don't always do that. Obviously it's, you know, it's periodically if I do kind of, you know, alter the angle of the bevel, which I'm a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for here? I can't think of the right word here. Basically, I'm watching out that I don't, you know, put too much of a shallow angle on it. This is across the board. This is with me chisels, me plane irons, and obviously this guy. So with that out of the way, and again, I don't do that all the time. What I tend to use, well, what I do use, I don't use anything else, is I use an axe, is it an axe puck, I believe they're called. So basically, an axe, I want to say, I don't know why I want to say axe, an axe puck is what it sounds like. It's basically like a pug, what you would see in, I don't know, is it ice hockey? We don't really play like a lot of ice hockey in the northeast of England. But yeah, so it's like a puck, and this is a double-sided one. So on one side it's, what is it? It is a 120 grit, and on the other side it is 320 grit. So it is actually a big jump in the terms of grit, because what I tend to do, I tend to go from the 120 obviously to the 320, and then I jump straight away to my strop, and it is a big jump in grit, but jumping to this rather than not like kind of discluding this, I feel it benefits it. Obviously there's arguments against and for it. So what I'll actually do, again, I did do a video on this. I'll actually tuck this into my ribs, so I'm holding one of the handles with the other handle into my ribs, so it's just underneath my pec here, and the cutting edge is pointing in towards me belly button, and basically I'll just have the blade and I'll just be using circular motions. Obviously I'll use the harsher side and then use the finer side, and I'll just go backwards and forwards. And what I do with this is an actual a convex cut. So I talked about this in my sharpening podcast I done whenever I've done it. So basically a convex is where you'll have a belly, not to be confused with a, hang on a minute, I am confusing myself here. Yes, a convex is a kind of an outward arc, and a concave is an arc that'll go in on itself, if that makes sense. So a concave is kind of a bit more like a skateboard ramp, and a convex is kind of a bit more like the edge of a hill, if that makes sense. So that's the type of thing that I'll do on here. I have seen people use these, well, sharpen these on whetstones, I want to say. I don't think it was a diamond plate. I have seen a few people use it like that. So basically, as I was saying, once I've you know, made a burr at the back, I'll just turn the whole thing over. I'll pull the burr off, you know, like going, you know, I'll basically won't touch the edge and then just pull all the way along. And then I'll give it a bit of a circular motion just to make sure all the burr is off the back or folded back over. Then I'll take it straight to the strop, put the strop on a rubber mat, which is my preferred method. It doesn't move. And basically what I'll do, see if I can give you a little bit of a demonstration on camera here. My bench is a little bit chocker here. So I'll just go from left to right. This, I do actually need to bring this up a little bit. See if I can get it up. So I do need to put this against the peg. Is this peg going to be long enough? Let's try it. It might be, yeah. So what I'll do is I'll take it from the left and slide it, skew it to the right, if that makes sense. So I'm starting at the left side of the blade, and as I'm pushing it forward, I'm also pulling it to the left. So by the time I finish, the right hand side of the blade is fully onto the leather strop. So it's the same again when I'm doing it. I might do, you know, anywhere from 20 to 40 strokes. So once the top's been done, then if you want to, which is a bit more steady, you can actually just pop it down, and it's exactly the same again when I'm doing the back, because the back is straight. I know it's not straight on all draw knives. Obviously there is curved draw knives, but the one I've got is a flat draw knife, so this is how I sharpen it. Last on the list is some tenon cutters. So I've only got the two tenon cutters, or dowel makers. They do this, the two tasks. So the difference between these, so this is a 5/8 and I've got a 3/8 here. The difference between these is that the 3/8 has got a cambered blade. I'm not sure why it's got a cambered blade. I've never really looked into it. It's just got a cambered blade. It was bought like this. I didn't put a camber blade on it. This was brand new from the factory. And this guy here has got a straight edge on it, and that's the 5/8. That's possibly because this is a little bit bigger, I'm guessing, and with this being smaller, it's just better to have the cambered blade on. That's a guess, by the way. So the issue with sharpening these, not so much the square blade one. I pretty much just sharpen that the same way as what I would sharpen the spoke shave, so that one isn't too much of an issue. This guy, however, the cambered blade is a little bit problematic. It can be a little bit problematic. I haven't sharpened this for a while. Same again, I don't use these a lot, but obviously when I do use them, it's nice to have them. So again, I kind of sharpen this in the same fashion as a spoke shave, but with the added what word would suit this? Shall we say challenge? The added challenge of the camber just means it's not as steady backwards and forwards. So I can't quite remember, to be honest with you, but if memory serves us right, which I'm a little bit hazy about it, I do believe I use a circular motion with the camber blade, with it being so short. So basically I'll get me bevel kind of where I want it to be. And how to describe this for people that are listening. So basically, with it being cambered, I'm going to start on one side. So I typically use me 3 fingers, and again, this is from a little bit of hazy memory, but from what I can remember with the circular motion, so I'll use my first finger, so I'm putting more pressure on one side of the camber blade. So this is going to be if the back's facing up towards us, it's going to be the left side of the blade. So, you know, I'm going to give it a few circles and then apply more pressure to the center of the blade, which is my second finger, and obviously that's going to lift the 2 ends of the blade off the diamond stone, and it's going to put more pressure and sharpening the middle of the blade. And then obviously do the same with my third finger, and that's going to put more pressure onto the right hand side of the blade and basically tilt the whole blade up. And it's just going to be a backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. So, you know, me saying that, it sounds really simple, doesn't it? But in the past, I have to admit, I have struggled sharpening this one. It can be a little bit problematic. Obviously, I've got a lot more experience in sharpening now. Obviously, I've been sharpening my own tools for quite a number of years now. So when I do eventually come back to sharpening this, which I'm guessing might be the next time I use it, hopefully I should get it done in good time. I don't necessarily mind sharpening these awkward tools, or any tool for that matter, when it needs to be sharpened. My ethos around it is get it sharpened and get back to doing what you were doing as quickly as possible, or in good time, shall we say. I think that's a better statement, in good time. So, you know, I'm quite proficient at sharpening my Western chisels and me plane blades. So pretty much with me number 4, let's just say it needs sharpening. At the moment it does actually need sharpened. I can pretty much get this iron out of the plane, sharpened, honed, back in the plane, set back up in planing within about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit less. So for me, that's good time. And that's how I like to work with tools, with sharpening. If it needs sharpening, by all means sharpen it. But again, I like to be doing what I was doing in the first place. It's tools like these, or at least for me, that'll slow me down, and it can be a little bit frustrating for me. So as I said at the start, there's numerous tools that, you know, can slow you down or be awkward to sharpen be frustrating. I mean, maybe auger bits. I think I've done a video on that as well, so there is another video on that if you want to check that out. I'm not going to go into the auger bits thing because I feel like I've rabbited it on a little bit too much today. But what do you guys struggle with? I'd be keen to know what you guys struggle with sharpening, or maybe not so much struggle, maybe what do you find frustrating to sharpen. So if you leave a comment and let everybody know, I would be interested to read those. And until the next time, I shall speak and see you guys later.